How's everybody doing? Enthusiasm? All right. I'm Mcclain, and I'm here to talk to you about social support networks in EVE Online. All right, so social support networks, what are they? I promise this is going to be the only slide that actually has like words that you have to read on there. So social support networks provide emotional support. So these are things like empathy, concern, affection, trust, and acceptance. Informational support, such as advice, suggestions, experiential wisdom, which is big with some of our older crowd in here, and companionship. And this is got to say, this is going to be the most important one, a sense of social belonging. Humans are hardwired to need that sense of social belonging. So I can't put like enough emphasis on that. So to give you guys a little bit of context, and we're going old school here, I got papers. I could tell you my story, so that hopefully it'll give you a better feeling of what it's all about. All right. So it's September 18th, 2007. My infantry platoon had been manning a small combat outpost called Saray in the Deogal Valley of Kunar Province, Afghanistan for the last 2 months. We were woken up at first light by 50 caliber and light machine gun fire. We got out of our racks just like we'd done so many times before. From my little corner of our hooch, I could hear my squad leader, Staff Sergeant David Shaw. He was cursing, which wasn't exactly out of sorts for people of our profession and where we're at. But I could also hear rounds breaking through some of the wood beams of our hooch right above my head. Then I heard something hit the floor. Me and my buddy Goss ran over to see what was going on, and there was Sergeant Shaw. He was on the ground of the hooch. We saw him lying there. He was clutching his arm. He'd been hit, and he was bleeding out all over him. He was unresponsive, so Goss and I grabbed his arm so we could wrap it, because that's the first thing you do in combat casualty care is you stop the bleeding. He was unresponsive because he was in shock, which obviously is going to happen when you lose that much blood. So we grabbed the towel and went to dress the wound, and he was unresponsive. And I just repeated that part, didn't I? That's when we found his exit wound. The round had gone through his bicep and had torn the artery. At that point, we just ended up completely covered in blood. So us scrambling, I told Goss, I said, secure the wound, and I'm going to go get Doc. So, excuse me, my voice is a little rough. I've been yelling at nerds all weekend. And I lost my spot, too. I was getting Doc, thank you. There we go. So I ran to the door of the hooch, and there was like a 6-foot drop out of this. And here comes, thank you so much. It's not Tito's, thank God. And there's a 6-foot drop out of this hooch. It's just a set of stairs and just rocks in there everywhere like that. So it wasn't a really good idea to just kind of jump down. And before I could get out of the door, I'd saw rounds landing all over the foot of the stairs. So I stopped. I stopped like dead in my tracks. And it was like one of those movies where you see like time just kind of stops, just stands still. And it seemed like an absolute lifetime when I was standing there, when I was going through all the possibilities of what would happen if I stepped right out that door. But the urgency of the situation got to me, and I said, you know what? We're doing this, and damn the consequences, right? So I took a deep breath, and I jumped right out that door, and I ran right to the aid station. I got there, I told Doc, I said, Doc, Sergeant Shaw's hit. I need you to get in there and patch him up. So before he could do that, I kind of grabbed him by his collar, and I said, Doc, hold on, give me your rifle. And I ran out there without my rifle because we're like chicken with our head chopped off at that point. So he gave me his rifle, and I said, give me a minute. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to step onto our helicopter landing zone that was next to our aid station, and I was going to draw the enemy fire. So he gave me about 30 seconds. I went out there, I got nice and open on that HLZ, and I started laying rounds on known enemy positions. Now, obviously, if you've ever seen an M4, it's not going to do anything at those kinds of ranges that we were at. But it was going to get somebody's attention, and it was going to draw the machine gun fire so Doc could get in there and patch up Sergeant Shaw. So I did that about 2 more times. I duck back in, replace my magazine, get back out there, draw more fire. Eventually they got Sergeant Shaw back there, and this is what they tell me happened. When you're in a situation you have that kind of fear, your memory, it just kind of goes. And it's all just one big blur of a situation. So once we got him into the aid station, I went about, performing my duties like we'd always done. I went to the tower where we had our heavy weapons, and I put, accurate and direct fire in the enemy positions, so that way we could get a medivac in there and get him out of there. So after that, I was given an award for valor in combat. Now, valor had nothing to do with it. Sergeant Shaw was one of us. He's one of our little forgotten tribe out there in the mountains, and we're like family. We shared a human connection that few are lucky to experience in this lifetime. And that's an important thing to highlight right there, because I'm going to come back to that. In 2012, I was being medically retired from the Army following an incident where I had a really intense flashback during training. So they decided it'd be best if I would focus on getting better as opposed to doing another deployment. So when I was getting out of the Army, I was still coming to grips with exactly what I was dealing with and how it would shape my future. Once I Once I got out, I moved up to New Hampshire. I went up there to help my mom. Her husband had just recently passed from cancer, and she was she wasn't doing so hot. So I moved up there with my wife, and I didn't have any social support network in place. It was just me, my wife, and our dogs. Past that, I didn't know anybody, not a living soul up there. But thank God, my wife, and hold on, that's Miss Mcclain, as some of you know her, and some young stud right there. I don't remember who that is, but she has the patience of a saint. So through this whole thing, and this whole journey I'm taking you guys on, she's been amazing and super supportive. So I started finding out what my new normal would be, and it wasn't what I expected at all. Between the antipsychotics and the antidepressants, a complete lack of any kind of social support network, I was dealing with a genuine identity crisis. If I wasn't an infantryman anymore, what was I? Was I even me at that point? Don't worry, I know it's really heavy, but we're going to get to the good stuff. All of that on top of trying to understand my new brain I'd had after suffering multiple brain injuries in Afghanistan from being blown up. I can't really even count how many times I've been blown up. I get to about 5, and then I lose track of where I was to begin with, and I start over. It's kind of a cyclical thing. That was meant to elicit a laugh out of the audience. Thank you. With all this going on, it led me to close myself off. I shut myself away in the house. And anybody that knows anything about the social needs of people, it's extremely dangerous. I tried seeking help from the VA, but I got the typical guy. I got pills, and on top of pills, I got some really horrible experiences with some people that work at the VA. So, exactly, me and everybody else. So it's August 2013 now, and after shutting away, myself in the house, I looked for a game that I could spend a lot of time on, because gaming was still was a big hobby of mine. We did it in Afghanistan, and surprise, surprise, I found EVE Online. Who would have guessed that, right? So I started out in high sec, and then I moved to low sec, and I started getting to the social aspects of EVE. I started joining corps, and then I found faction warfare. I met some real characters in the Galente militia, but one in particular, a British FC named System Shark. I'm pretty sure he doesn't play anymore, but I mean, he was the catalyst for all of this, right? So he had a very particular style of language and bearing that you can't miss if you were ever in the military. So I joined his corps right away. We got right into the fighting, and it turns out, after talking to him, he was an infantryman just like myself. So we were able to talk about our experiences in Afghanistan, what it was like being outside of that, and just the lack of anybody who really cared about what was going on with you. So it was a really great experience, given everything that I was going through. It helped me put a lot of things in perspective. I was able to pack away a lot of stuff that I was dealing with. So, and being able to organize stuff and have that context from somebody with a shared experience, it can do a lot to really help somebody get into a better place. So realizing how helpful it had been for me, it hit me that if it's helping me this much, how much can it help everybody else that's out there dealing with this exact same thing that I am, this complete and total separation from a community. So, cue slide. I started Best of Us. It's a military veteran community in game, and we started that in October of 2014. I reached out to some podcasters and asked if they'd spread the word that we were trying to get vets together and have them help each other out. I decided on Best of Us, as the name is an identifier of the potential that those that the community loses through suicide, could have been truly the best of us, but we'll never see that potential realized. We spread the word, learning as best as I know how to. If anybody's ever interacted with the EVE community, there's a lot of very disparate groups, and to reach really large audiences is extremely difficult. So after I built some of these relationships, I met some really awesome people in the process. I was taking a leap of faith. The Boston meetup in March of 2015, that was the leap. So I was driving from my house out to Boston. It's an hour and a half through some of the worst traffic and the most miserable people you've ever seen in your life who are behind the wheel of an automobile. White knuckling all the way there. And at this point, I hadn't been anywhere outside of the house without my wife for 2 years. I can't put enough emphasis on that enough, because what happens now, I met some friends there. I have my man Dirk McGurk at Shadow and Light. So they were my social support network. So they'd promised to keep an eye on me in case I got overwhelmed and couldn't handle it, but it was a huge success. Here's where the pictures start getting really good. This is where the part of the speech where I'm told that we need to lighten up and make everybody happy and elicit these happy feelings. So the Boston meetup was amazing, and as you can see from my pint-sized little dev friend there, we had a blast. But later the next morning, I found out one of my guys that I'd been to Afghanistan with, I'd had him as an NCO. He'd overdosed. He died. So I started hearing stories, from my platoon mates about how he couldn't cope with his PTSD and how the VA didn't give him any help. This is the man I'd been through over 100 firefights with, almost been blown up with, scraped through some of the craziest close calls with. He was an integral part of my memory and my formative experience. He was gone. He didn't have a social support network back home that he could rely on. And here's the really prominent point, and what we're going to get the good part out of this is, if I hadn't had the social support network that I had found in EVE Online, I would have never recovered from his loss. And I can't stress that point enough, because now I'm showing you exactly what you can get out of a social support network from EVE Online, because that's what I was using. So after that, I had a renewed purpose. I was gonna, take that experience from the Boston meetup, tempered with everything that was going on, and I was gonna get out there, and I was gonna set a standard, and I was gonna show people what we could do, and how we could come together, and how people could help each other. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't take a lot to help each other. Three months later, I went to my first Eve Northeast, which at the time was Eve New England, and since they've switched, but we won't get into the scheduling details of that I don't like. But needless to say, it was a huge success. It was even better than the Boston meetup. I mean, if you could picture that, because let me show you. This last slide, we were belting out Sweet Caroline as we were obviously 3 sheets to the wind, and it was a pretty good time. So I got to meet a lot of people out there that I now call my friends. I also got to talk to CCP Guard and CCP Rise about Best of Us and what we were doing and how it can help other players. But it also brought up a really good point and a new integral part of my message. Get out to these player meetups. Come and meet these nerds. They're pretty awesome people. So I decided after Eve Northeast that I was going to go to Vegas that year. So now we're going from a small meetup in New Hampshire, of all places, to Las Vegas. So, with some help from my friend Shadow and Light, I made it out here, and guess what? An amazing time. I'm almost going to get to the slide, but I got one more thing. So I got to talk to all sorts of veterans about what we were doing because, like I said before, reaching all of these different groups in Eve is the true challenge of running something like this. On the pub crawl, on Team 10, Group 10, it turns out that I had an infantryman from Norway on our team. We didn't know it until we got to drinking and got to talking about stuff. An infantryman from Norway was on my pub crawl team. Like, we were everywhere. It absolutely blew my mind, and I still talk to him to this day. And I also got to talk CCP Seagull's ear off about veterans while we were both completely smashed on the way back from the pub crawl. Now we're gonna get to the good stuff. All right. Last year I sat down with Laz and Porkbutt doing an interview for TMC. And I told him, I said, I hadn't seen such a positive and accepting environment since I'd left the Army. Think about that for a second. That's huge. Like, everything that I'd gone through, I hadn't seen another environment like I had in the Army. A piece of what we found out there in those mountains, that connection we had, there's a piece of that here this weekend. And that's a very profound thing to say. Eve itself and its day-to-day, coupled with Eve meets and the potential to have a meaningful and lasting effects on people's lives. So right now I want to bring up a very special guest up on stage with me. Lauren, can you come up here, please? This is Lauren, also known as Mom Bellicose to many of us. She's the mother of the Brave Newbies pilot we lost to suicide a while back now.
2014.
2014 it's been, wow. So not only can Eve reinforce our social support networks, but the level of connection extends past that. Lauren regularly participates in our community via Twitter, giving words of wisdom and encouragement to all of her space kids on the interwebs. She's a personal hero of mine, and as well as a reminder of the level of human connection and support we can all derive from our game of internet spaceships. She's a great part of my own personal support network through our little community in Tweet Fleet. So I want to do a little experiment if everybody will bear with me. So I have Lauren up here because she's part of my social support network.
You did so good.
Thank you. So if you think that you're a part of somebody's social support network at Eve, I want you to stand up. All right, now I need everybody to stand up. Because the reality is we're all part of somebody's social support network in Eve. Through our interactions in our corps, our communities that we decide to participate in, and that's the message that I wanted to leave everybody with. So I wanted to thank Lauren for coming up here and being an amazing person.
You're an amazing person. You are an amazing person.
All right, and I'm told that we have to wrap it up, so I will see everybody at the Chateau party.